Chapter 9. The Simplicity of Manifesting in the New Energy. Once you shift into the audience as witness to the dream existence of the false self, you experience a sense of freedom from the identity you have believed defined you. These definitions, which include your attachments and expectations of outcomes, are now distanced from your self-awareness. As I said several times, this is not total freedom, as the conditioning definitions are still tethered to you, but they can no longer molest you in the same way they once did, when you believed they represented who you are. It's as if you've been in a seemingly endless struggle climbing the mountain of higher consciousness, carrying a backpack filled with rocks. The rocks represent these identities, attachments, and expectations, your conditioning. The heavy weight of the backpack continuously captured your attention, and that attention made the backpack heavier and heavier, making the top of the mountain seem further and further away and less accessible. When you shift into the audience, it allows you the opportunity of watching the climber without the heavy weight of the backpack conditioning distracting your attention from the top of the mountain, which represents who you really are. Your attention is only on who you really are, and that attention expands the truth of it in your awareness and your experience. Placing your attention on who you really are, I am that I am, shifts reality. Now, manifesting no longer occurs through the old energy formula that obeys and is tainted by the false self-conditioning. Listening. Witnessing the false self and its conditioning from the freedom of the audience, and keeping your attention on who you really are, God, effortlessly brings up what is next ready to be transformed. This is a form of listening, since you do not need to do anything for the next conditioning to arise. The self will send you a message, and now that you are listening, it will be easier and easier to recognize. You simply look at the conditioning, feel it fully, embrace it, and grace will transform it. As this occurs, you'll feel lighter and lighter as the rock conditioning is removed from the backpack. You could say that they are transformed into weightless diamonds that allow the light of the God that you are to radiate out into the world brighter and brighter. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light, which is a quote from Jesus. This passage is paraphrased from the Bible, but it's an accurate description of what actually happens. When your attention is focused only on the truth that you are God, transformation takes place in your body as well. The very cells of the body vibrate at such a high frequency that they radiate light to your world, and everyone and everything can feel this light. Some can actually see it, as many great works of art have depicted. Just your presence in the world, without saying or doing anything, has an uplifting influence on everything and every experience. And a quote from Muji, "A single liberated being sheds enough light to raise the consciousness of countless beings." Life does not really begin until you become aware of who you really are. Until then, it's a dream, defined by temporary phenomena that come and go. The false self requires more and more dazzling phenomena to keep it interested, and that as God, conscious of who you are, incarnated in a physical body with a mind and a body that are now in their rightful position as servants of the self, you make choices from this infinite menu of creations as you listen, and are given what choices are perfectly aligned with your life purpose. You don't think up or imagine something to create. What to choose just comes to you when you listen. Inspirations come to you about what to do, where to go, what to say, and who to say it to. In the old energy, when the false self received these inspirations, they were always tainted by its conditioning, and no matter how great the manifestation may have been that eventually appeared in their world, this conditioning corrupted the experience with a host of conditioned gremlins that stole the natural joy that you are and the grand experiences that come with joy when you're free. There was a phase in my rise to wealth where I had reached a certain level that would virtually triple my income. There was a waiting period of about 90 days before it kicked in, and I remember how panicky I felt while I waited. I felt sick. I slept poorly. I double and triple checked my facts and figures to be sure that I followed all the requirements to qualify for the eventual bump in my income. I literally wore the fear that I felt around my body like a suit of heavy, rusty armor. Then, when the first check arrived from my lofty new position, I was shaken to the core that the expected raise had not occurred. In my anxiety and fear, I had indeed made a simple error, and it erased the giant increase in my income for that month. Although I corrected the error from then on, it showed me how debilitating the fear associated with my neediness could be. I had made a simple error that a high school math student would have picked up, because my false self was so attached to the results that I expected that I was blinded to the mistake. I didn't recognize this message from the self until years later when I began looking at my conditioning from the perspective of self-discovery. So the conditioning that caused this drama manifested in lots of other ways for many more years, diluting and poisoning wonderful new experiences that I could have enjoyed fully. Gratitude. When inspirations come to the false self, it immediately begins planning, complete with lists, timetables, and deadlines, imaginative concepts, and disciplines. It's an exciting time for the false self, and it devours the hours and weeks and months as its dream begins to take form. It may even be practicing gratitude, but it's a contrived and controlled-oriented exercise designed to make things happen. The stress emanating from the false self's conditioning gets masked in the beginning of a dream project, and is scarcely noticed. If it is noticed, it is usually regarded so as a good thing, a good stress, because the false self is having so much fun. True gratitude emanates from the recognition that whatever resonates with your highest purpose is already done. When you're open, listening to the self, and aware that it is the real you, God, you're listening to and you are flowing with your life purpose. As with the mind, there's no figuring out or trying to make sure it's in everyone's best interest. Everything you need to know is shown to you perfectly and in the perfect moment. Everything is aligned perfectly with who you are as God, which means it's aligned perfectly with peace and love, with joy and beauty, and with freedom and abundance. This is intellectually known to many, but very few live this way as yet, in total knowing that everything you require for your highest purpose will just show up. You don't need to know the what, the when, the why, the where, the how, or the who of it. This doesn't mean it will just fall from the sky. It may require that you do something, and that doing will be shown to you at the perfect moment. You won't have to figure it out with the mind as the false self believes. Other times, people, places, things, and or circumstances will just seem to show up. This is the miraculous way of the new energy, the way of self-mastery. Spontaneity and synchronicity. Spontaneous moments of synchronicity, where everything just comes together perfectly, are part of being in the moment. You may have experienced such moments despite still being locked in the world of the false self. As I mentioned earlier, everyone has experienced moments of timelessness, where they were lost in their joy, and the false self disappeared in those moments. The dots had not been connected to real freedom and who you really are, but a spontaneous, synchronous moment of living in truth occurred just the same. In the mid-1990s, I got my first computer, and it reminded me that I had a manuscript for a book I had written 8 years earlier, just sitting in a filing cabinet in the basement. This was before the allure of the internet, and all I could think of to use the computer for was for record keeping and word processing. So I decided to transfer the book to a file on the computer. It took about 6 months to transpose my scratchy handwritten notes, rewrite about half the book, and change the title several times. But it was a totally joy-filled experience. The day I finished it, I literally heard a voice say, "So now it's time to get published." I knew nothing about getting published, so I went to a bookstore, and as I walked in, I was pulled towards a magazine called the Sedona Journal of Emergence. And I picked it up, and I page-flipped a section that talked about getting published. It just kind of jumped out and got my attention from the page. I didn't even read what it said. I just went home and called the number. There must have been a fire drill or something, because the editor-publisher never answers the phone of a book publishing company directly. But that day she did. I told her I'd written a book and wanted to publish it, and she asked what the name was, and I said The Millennium Tablets. Immediately she said, "Oh, we might be interested in publishing that." And I thought, okay, well, that's nice, not realizing how rare the possibility of this conversation was, let alone what she was saying. So she asked me to send her a disc of the book, and I would hear from her soon. 3 days later she phoned and said, "Sure, we'll publish this," and that was it. Easy peasy. Spontaneity and synchronicity are expressions of standing in the awareness of the God you are, available to shift from here to there in a moment when the self guides you to, just like a little child. It is also the way manifestation shows up in the new energy. They appear to function much the same in the old energy success formula way, but the difference is the absence of conditioning attached to all manifestations that the false self experiences. I mentioned that I started a theater promotion company in the early 1980s. I'd been working on what my false self considered a dreary dead-end job, and really longing to have a business of my own where I thought at the time my freedom could be found. And there was the basis of a burning desire sitting right there. Just when my frustration desire was at a peak, I met one of the best-known entertainment theater producers in Canada. We hit it off immediately, and he told me what Toronto needed was more promotion of groups for its many live theaters. It wasn't the industry that excited me, but that I saw a golden opportunity to start a business of my own in what looked like a well-timed moment. My new friend immediately introduced me to several well-placed people in the business, but I didn't have the money to start a business. Then about a week after my first meeting with him, again spontaneously and synchronously, I ran into a friend I had helped a few years before when he was virtually living on the street hand to mouth. He had since then married the daughter of a man who owned a large advertising company and started his own ad company occupying an unused building they owned. My friend's company had not worked out, but he still had use of this 9,000 square foot fully equipped building on which he paid no rent. He said, "Go ahead, just move in, and we'll figure it out later once you get started." Out of nowhere, like a miracle, I was catapulted into my own business. However, all my conditioned baggage went with me, and 18 months later my business closed its doors, but spontaneity and synchronicity had kicked in because I was listening to the self's message of inspiration in the beginning. The creation choices the self sends us are always in perfect alignment with our life purpose. And the fire that brings about spontaneity and synchronicity blazes a trail through our experiences. However, without the baggage of the false self's conditioning, we live in joy and flow in harmony with truth for the good of all. Gratitude. When you're living in the awareness of the God you are, you stand in continuous gratitude, knowing that you're being given messages that are in perfect harmony with your highest purpose. They are not conditioned by the false self that's trying to make something happen that will reduce its fear masked as success. You heard these inspiration messages because you were listening. Your part, the individuated God self that you are, living in a body, is to make the choice to receive these creations. It's a choice you're giving yourself to experience something new, and that something new will always be for the highest good of all, pure, beautiful, and unconditioned. In truth, however, it's beyond even receiving, which is an old energy way that suggests that you will now get something that you did not already have, that is not already you. And that's another way of expressing separation. You are all that is, and you lack nothing. You are simply manifesting a physical extension of yourself that has already been created and is ready to be extended into a manifested expression. The enormous power of gratitude is in its awareness that what you're manifesting already exists here and now, and what you give your attention to expands in your experience. This is totally different from the old energy success formula way of manifesting through a burning desire, a plan, visualization, and hard work. It is effortless, even though in some cases it will require that you do something, but when you are living as your real self, you're in that timeless, spaceless now where the concept of effort is lost. You could be physically tired, even exhausted afterward, but there was no effort as your false self experiences it. The core essence of what is manifesting is you. There's only you because you are one. You are God, and nothing else exists outside one. The manifestation is you extended out into your world, which is also entirely you. It's simply a new expression, like a unique snowflake of you. When you come to the place in your heart where who you really are is your reality, you experience yourself in everything as everything that occurs. Separation does not exist. In fact, at some point, you don't even know what the concept means. Manifesting from the infinite menu you as God created before time and space, both in yourself and as yourself, is simply a matter of choice. Even the concept of deciding what to choose simply comes to you, and is always in perfect harmony with your joy, which is also who you are. Everything is God and is felt as love, abundance, joy, peace, freedom, and beauty. It's all inside you. There's no separation, no matter how God shows up. The disguises that have masked this truth have all fallen away. The creative choice. I've mentioned a few times that as one, God is always now, and therefore the concept of creating something that does not now exist is not possible. Everything that can possibly manifest as a thing or an experience has already been created, and we, as God, consciously or unconsciously, choose from an infinite menu of already created possibilities. We receive the perfect choices for our highest purpose all the time as inspirations, which the false self believes is an expression of its creativity, but the self knows it's an aspect of itself ready to come into the world of time and space and be experienced multidimensionally without conditioning. When a musician receives the music and lyrics for a song, he or she is actually downloading an already complete musical creation in snippets. They'll get a bar or two, then another and another, until the piece of music arrives completely. Then lyrics will arrive, or the download may come in the reverse, or even piece together one verse at a time. Mozart was known to receive an entire symphony in a flash, and then write down the notes to it like dictation without a single correction. This is the multidimensional way of choosing from the infinite menu of creation, from one dimension complete in every way to another dimension where it can be savored and tasted. Until now, for most people, it's been in tiny jigsaw pieces, but as humanity transforms back into the awareness of who it is as God, the experience will be more like the Mozart way, spontaneous and synchronistic. Everything is God, and as we become aware of the truth of this, there is a fluidity, a seamlessness about the creative expression that is unknown to the false self, but which reveals more and more expressions of the infinite and boundless one that we are. Summary of the simplicity of manifestation. First, stay open and listen for the inspirations of the self of what creations to choose as aspects of your life purpose. Second, choose what the self has shown you. Next, express gratitude often that it's already done. Do not try to figure out any of the details. The God you are extends itself into those manifestations. The when and the how requires no attention. You simply fall into the unknown and know that everything is already taken care of. And a quote by Adyashanti: "What the universe, the God you are, will manifest when you are in alignment with it is a lot more interesting than what you, the false self, tries to manifest." If you need to act, you'll be shown. If you need do nothing, you'll also be shown. Don't limit the God you are. What you're doing when you stay open and say yes to everything from the position of witness is to be empty, which is the truth about who you really are in the unmanifested state. You're not telling the God you are what is best for you. That comes from the conditioned false self. You're a blank screen that says, "Tell me where to go, what to do, what to say, and whom to say it to, and what I need for my highest purpose." In this way, you're not limiting the God you are, and your life experience will unfold abundantly in all its glory and grandeur and love. And a quote from Mooji: "Be empty." That's it. When you're empty, you're the most powerful, because you're present, you're awake, you're alive, and you are nothing.